Hi there and welcome to another Beyond the Base game video. I'm Luke Hector and this is a mini-series where I talk about expansions to games, because a lot of the times reviewers don't tend to cover expansions a lot. Sometimes there's not much to talk about, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, but honestly expansions are usually the thing I get more excited for about a game. So many new games come out now where I'm like, I don't know, I'm not too fussed anymore, it's like, it's the same thing, we've seen it before. Expansions though, for a game I like, I definitely want to check them out. So this series deals with all that. So on this one we've got Meadow, Downstream, and to cut it short, it's got the cutest otter on the cover, so 10 out of 10, the end. Alright, fine, we'll talk about the game in more detail. Yes, so this is an expansion to Meadow. This was a game actually that I bought, sold, and then rebought. Because I bought it and then played it a few times at 4-player and thought, this is really long-winded, this is taking forever. Sold it, even though I thought the game was generally good, but then realised, I'm starting to get a little bit bored with Quadropolis, the other game I had that was similar to this, and I thought, man, I really missed that artwork and the nature theme and everything, so I reacquired it and realised, yeah, if I play it with less players, it's a bit better. Well, actually, it's a lot better with less players. So this is Downstream, which is the first expansion for Meadow, and in some ways it's more of the same, but in some ways it adds a new element, although there is a big catch that we will get to later. So the main crux of it is that it deals with a river. So you have new cards, as always before, so you get lots of these gorgeous artwork cards which just make you want to drool over the artwork. Seriously, what was it their name? I'm trying to pronounce it. Carolina Kayak? K-Y-A-K? How do you spell that with an accent on the Y? I don't know, but Carolina, this art is gorgeous. I love your work. I got your picture on my wall downstairs in the kitchen that Rebel Games gave me when I first reviewed normal Meadow or something. It's like, it looks lovely in my kitchen. This artwork is gorgeous. And yes, of course, more water artwork. So my favorite style of scenery, water, waterfalls, rivers, and that sort of thing. With this lady's artwork, oh yeah, these look great. These cards function exactly like they did before, with one minor exception. You've now got the water baseline cards, that you stack things on top, and fish have to go on these directly. Well, fish has to go in water, it kind of makes sense. The rest of the stuff though, you got like frogs and flowers and wolves and a few other like repeat stuff from the previous game, and same requirement. They have requirements, they have different symbols on the top, and you stack them on your cards just like normal.
Look at me! I'm Dr. Zoidberg, homeowner!
However, all of these cards don't have victory points on them. They have instead oars on them, as in OAR, rowing your boat. And so the reason that you're getting these is so that you can sail yourself across this riverboard. And there's two versions that you can play. You can either play this very nice looking sort of lazy creek for the slightly more laid back version where, you want to get as far as you can, but for the most part, you can go at your own pace. Or you can play the rapids version, which is a little bit more competitive. There's kind of like a first come, first serve for like the best choice of certain tile rewards and that. But they function in many ways the same game. You have a river token that, goes on the river, and then when you get the oar symbols, depending on how many oar notches there are on the oar, you move your guy across the river, and as you go along, you'll trigger various bonuses as you go past little signposts. And you've got a choice of routes sometimes, or you've just got the one route in the you've got a couple of routes there in the Wild Rapids, I do apologize. But mainly you'll get victory points the further you go along the track, and like I say, the bonuses will still be useful. And of course, the board looks gorgeous. As for the cards, well, the cards will sit along the tableau on this side of the board here. And in order to collect these cards, you now have one extra token that you use in order to acquire your cards. And this one basically just slots into this board and you pick from the entire row and grab a card. So much in the same vein as what you've seen before. The cards function 90% the same. The whole idea of collecting the cards functions in pretty much exactly the same. The main new element is just which side of the board you want and which of the bonuses you have and which route you're going to take. So it's fairly familiar territory to what you've seen before, apart from some of the iconography on these boards is a little bit hard to tell what they mean at first, so you've got to refer to the rulebook in that respect. And there's some slight different setup changes depending which one you use, and you kind of have to double check the rulebook for how you're setting up the game. It's not the easiest thing to remember. But for the most part, the rules are very similar and intuitive to what you did before. If you know how to play normal Meadow, you'll get into this pretty quickly. That is to say, do you want to teach this with people who have never played the game before? That's a bit more of a hit and miss scenario, because they've already got to get used to the whole card system and how it works in Meadow and the choices and getting those path tokens and the scenery cards and everything. The idea that you've got to then throw this on top might overwhelm a few players depending on the target market here. If you're playing this with gamers, then gamers should be able to jump straight into this fine, but non-gamers, you know, like light gamers that you're trying to introduce to something a little bit new and different for them, this maybe might be a little bit too much. If so, leave it out for your first game and you can just bring it back in on the second game. But, you know, maybe you'll get lucky, because I've had it work sometimes and not other times. It really does depend on the crowd that you're playing it with. So in terms of the gameplay, it's a nice little bit of fun. In no way do I think this is essential. It's not fixing anything from the base game, it's just adding another option on your turn. Each round you'll have another tile to put out and you'll have more cards to collect. These cards might actually make it a bit easier for you to get the cards off the main Meadow board. In fact, I dare say it actually does do that, because, you know, in the 4-player games we play particularly, it's like, you know, we've practically used up every single card in the main decks, mainly just because these do give us a little bit more flexibility with like, oh, I really could use that simple, oh, there isn't one on this board, oh, but there's one on the river board, yoink. You know, so it opens things up and makes it a bit more, not free form, but maybe it reduces the tightness down a little bit, but not to crazy levels. 4-player is always a little bit like that. But I like the idea that I can decide to focus more on the Meadow board, or I can focus on this. I mean, you're only going to get so many points from focusing entirely on this, so you do need to pay attention to the board in some respects. Focusing on river and nothing else isn't going to win you the game. But if you can get to the end, it's 20 points, although that is quite difficult to do. In fact, I mean, just trying to get to 13 and 17 is quite tricky on this particular Lazy Creek board. But the bonuses have their uses. Getting more path tiles, getting other cards, getting specific victory point cards that only appear on the rivers. So there's some cool stuff that you can work with here. But there is a bit of a catch, and it's rather a big catch. In fact, it's such a big catch that I've actually house ruled my certain games I've played of this. Think about it. And this is something that reviewers are not mentioning. Again, why? This is the tokens that you have for playing each round, okay? So when you have 3 players, or less, I believe, you have the question mark token. So you don't need this in a 4-player game, okay, fine. But you have your 4 tokens as normal. You now have this river token. So essentially, you're adding another turn per player every round of the game. And this adds up a lot. It's extra actions. It's a bit like the expansions for Pursuit of Happiness that I talk about a lot. Same problem there. As much as those expansions are great, each one adds another action for the player each round, which means the game is longer as a result. And when you're playing this solo or with 2 players, it's not too bad. It's not that noticeable. 3 though, you start noticing, oh man, yeah, we have been at this for a fair while. 4 players is actually so long, so crazy long with 4 players, and so like, there's cards everywhere, that I actually have to house rule the game to make it playable. I don't think the expansion works very well in a 4-player experience, because Meadow was already too long with 4. I thought it was much better at 2 and 3, alright? You know, 3 absolute max. 4 players, only if everybody knows exactly what they're doing, and even then no AP. But really, Meadow was pushing it at 4 players. With the river expansion thrown in though, if you don't make any tweaks to the system, it is flat out too long at 4 players. So I actually now house rule this if I play it with 4 and sometimes even 3 players. Regardless of whether you get the question mark token or not, you now only get to place, well, in 4-player case, you only get to place 4 of these, not 5. So you always have to place your river token, or you could actually, I don't know, you could house rule it how you like, but I think the way I've done it is that I've basically said normally you have your 1, 2, 3, 4 and water token, and that's normally 5 things you do in a round. I now say you only do 4. You have to choose which one of the 5 you don't do in a round, but you're essentially making up for the fact that you've gained an extra water action as an option by removing 1 action total from the round per player. Trust me, you want to do this. It just stops it going way too long, and it forces you to make a decision as to which number you want to use. And maybe in a round you won't take a water card at all. You'll just say, you know what, I don't fancy it. I'm just going to use the 4 normal. Though if I'm playing, I'll usually be like, right, which one of these numbers am I getting rid of? Because I want a water card, please. I want the otter. Is the otter card there yet? I want the otter. Otters are so damn cute. They are so damn cute. But You have to, and that is a flaw with the expansion. It adds more length to the game, and if you thought it was too long before, this is not going to help it, it's going to make it worse. So you're going to need to house rule it a little bit if you want to make it, keep it to the length it should be. Finally, there's a small tweak to the solo rules. The solo mode in Meadow was, not great to say the least. It was somewhat forgettable. Here, they've done a slight tweak where you now have a dummy player to go up against. But it's not that much different from the original. You essentially now have like a dummy player of tiles that you flip over and put into the notches as necessary. And if it's the question mark, you flip over a different card deck which has like the option as to what it does. And you again try and beat your score and you go at tier ratings. It's not exactly a massive boost to the solo mode, although it is an improvement to the solo mode. If I'm going to play the solo, which occasionally I do want to do because it is just nice and pleasant to sit down with this artwork, but I'm going to use the Downstream version, never the original ever again. But that's not to say I recommend that you get this game purely for solo mode, because the solo mode is kind of meh, it's fine, it's good every now and again, but I wouldn't necessarily want to play it all the time. This is really one of those games that you're buying for 2 and 3 players ideally, which does mean I'm pretty much playing it 3 player mostly, but I've got some friends who do really like this game, and with the house rules I've implemented, we can get through a 4 player game without myself going too insane. But yeah, the solo mode's okay, but nothing to really write home about. So the Meadow expansion is essentially nice. It's nice, it's pleasant, it's a nice little spice of life to add to Meadow, which is already a solid game anyway. This is just more options. You can play on 2 different sides, so you've got a bit of replay value, but mainly it's like I've got more cards, I've got more gorgeous artwork to look at, I can decide whether to play, the lazy river or the river rapids, but it's essentially, alright, as well as getting points from these, I can also think, well, I'd like some bonuses from the river. It's nice, it's zen-like almost, it's pleasant, but it does have that caveat that it does extend the length of the game. No matter what player count you're at, it will add to the length, because one extra option around adds up with the players as time goes on, to the point where in 4 players, you're going to want to use that house rule tweak of mine to, reduce the number of actions you have in the game and go from there, because with 4 players plus this expansion, with no tweaks to the rules, the game is frankly too long for me to want to bring out. So it really does cause that little bit of a problem, but a small house tweak and I'm okay with it. The rest of the expansion though is solid. Everything looks great, it's a relatively cheap expansion, it's got the cutest otter on the cover, although that's not going to affect my rating. I just love talking about that otter and staring at it. Seriously, I want that picture on my wall. Otters are awesome. Anyway, but getting distracted. The otter is so distracting. It is very, very distracting. I bet most of you have just been staring at that rather than me on this video. But the expansion is nice. It's solid. It's getting an 8 out of 10 for me. It's not essential by any means. If you don't like Meadow, you're not going to suddenly like it with this river included. It doesn't really fix anything from the base game apart from slightly improve the solo mode. But it's just nice. It's cool. And, I'm glad I've got it in my game. Most of the time I will want to bring it out, but not necessarily all the time. But it's not going to just sit in the box and never get played. It will see the light of day more than most expansions that you do see that, overcomplicate things. This is just nice, cool. If you like the pretty pictures and you want a little bit of a, river to go down just to bring some happy memories, then by all means, grab this expansion and see what you think. So that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple Beyond the Base Game. If you like what you see, then please remember you can thumb up the video, and please thumb it up on Board Game Geek if you see it. It'd be great to see a video of mine in the hot reviews section. But most of all, get your comments down below. I want to know what your thoughts on Meadow. So do you agree with anything that I've said today about the whole player count and length thing? Do you play it with 4? Do you prefer to play it with 2? Are you one of the people who loves playing it solo? What do you think of River? Is there a particular side of the river you like? Do you think that the extension to the length is horrible? Do you think the house rule sounds good? Or have you got a better house rule in mind? Let me know your thoughts. I always like to respond when I can. So until next time, you can check out more content on the channel, including some live streams that I have done, including the top 10 games we dislike but respect that I did with Dan from Chairman of the Board. His idea, and it turned out to be a pretty fun list overall. So take care, and remember as always, regardless of how cute that otter is, it's still only a game. Bye for now.
You don't love me!